right, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Customer Success Talks, Real Challenges, Experts Advice. Today, we will be talking about storytelling in customer success. So, prepare your popcorns because Nav and myself, we have ours. Right, Nav?
Ready to go.
Ready to go. So, in the meanwhile, because we know that you were not ready, we will give you some time for you to go for your popcorns, your Coke, and all of that sugar that we shouldn't eat. And what we're going to do in the meanwhile is that we're going to talk about storytelling. We will also be going through the fundamentals of it. Why is it important? And then we will jump into a real life storytelling part where our guest is going to give us how does a real storytelling successful looks like. And we're going to use AI. So it's enough of introduction. Let's go right ahead and introduce our Michael Jordan of customer success, Nav. That's what I know. That's what I think about you, my friend.
Oh, Baron, you flatter me. I still need to add that to my resume. Michael Jordan of customer success. It's great to be here. I'm really excited for this. I think storytelling is such an important piece of how you build connections with people, and I think one of the most important things we do as CSMs is to build a connection with the person that you're working with on the customer side. It's such a great way when we talk about things like, oh, you got a risk in your portfolio. How do you manage that? You need to give the customer a call. The way to get the information you need out of your customer is to already have built a connection with them for them to be able to be honest and open with you. And I think what we're going to be covering today is going to be very important for a lot of CSMs out there who are trying to find their way, especially moving from the sort of lower ranks in the CS world up into like strategic and stuff, to make sure that you actually have the skill in your tool belt.
You just use. I mean, you said everything perfectly. But I want to highlight that you said toolbox. I also agree with that. I think that it also makes it digestible for people to understand, makes it so sticky. So I think that it is definitely a really important tool. But let's go and introduce our guest today, Nav. Today we're talking with Christine Naidu. Her journey is really inspiring and it's actually diverse at the same time. She has 15 years of experience in which she has been sales manager, an account manager, and the last 5 years as a passionate frontline customer success manager. But there's something else. She has been a yoga instructor for the last 21 years. Welcome, Christine, to our podcast, and thank you so much for your time.
Hey, amazing, Bayron and Nav. It's really an honor to be here and to learn from both of you and as well share some of my experiences as well. And, you talked about yoga. It's actually been a part of my life for about 30 years. I started when I was 27 after the birth of my first son, and I'm still at it. In the stormy seas of life, I think yoga is one of the big pillars for me.
Amazing. Thank you so much, yeah, Christine, for being here. We really, really appreciate it. And you know what we appreciate
Mhm,
is what you're going to also share with everyone listening to this podcast because you went
mhm.
at the extra mile, and we're going to also see how storytelling actually works on a real life scenario. But before going into that part and before going into the
Mhm.
popcorn side, I'm curious to know briefly about your journey because when I was doing a research, I noticed that you had a 6 month career break. How was it for you?
That's such an interesting question. And you know how kids come out of high school or university, and before they get their first job or go on to university, they take what they call a gap year.
Uh-huh.
Just think
Yeah.
about the time that I've taken now as a gap year during my midlife period. So it's been a wonderful experience. I've had the opportunity to travel a bit. I was out in Barcelona, Italy, and France. I was very honored to spend time with
Nice.
friends and family. And there was also a growth period as well. The learning never stops. And I think that's part of why I love customer success so much, is because of that growth mindset around learning, and spent some time investing in improving skills, soft skills and hard skills.
Nice.
I'm delighted with everything that I've learned about DEI and intersectionality. I've developed a strong interest in responsible tech, and I've actually taken on a volunteer role with a
Amazing.
nonprofit that focuses on responsible tech, responsible AI, and the
Wow.
role that every one of us has, and dove into more technical things around AI, prompt engineering, got a bit of exposure to IoT and Microsoft Azure fundamentals as well. But, really this time has been excellent for that self-reflection and saying to myself, what really matters?
Yeah.
How am I going to redefine my life as a customer success professional and as a human being? Where
Amazing.
do I add value? And, what do I want to spend my time and energy on? So it's been a wonderful experience. Wonderful. Recommend it to everybody. Yeah.
It sounds like a whole journey, Christine. That's amazing.
I would love to do that. Yeah, I never took a gap year after high school or after university, and I regret that so much because you go
Mm,
into work life and it's just never ending, never stops. You just keep going, right? And it hasn't stopped for a very long time. So that's such a great idea, Christine. I'd love to do that. And if I do that,
Oh,
I'll let you know.
yeah, definitely, definitely. Actually, there's a writer out there. His name is Chip Conley. He's also an inspirational speaker. He used to run a chain of hotels in the US, boutique hotels called Joie de Vivre. And he was also consulting with Airbnb when they first started out at the very beginning. And, he talked about midlife as a stage in life, people ages 35 to 75 as that main stage. But what was interesting was his recommendation that we all take some gap time. Even if you can't
mhm.
take a whole year, maybe it's a week, maybe it's a month.
Yeah,
So that self-reflection is a good process for all of us.
If
brilliant.
I'm gonna add in the resources section, people, everyone listening, the readings that Christine is sharing. Christine, I wanna highlight that you said the learning never stops. That's amazing to hear, and I think that we and the people listening to this, that's why they're here for to learn about customer success. And what about if we change the gears a little bit and we jump into storytelling? But let's go with the basics. Let's start with the basics. And for you, Christine, why is that storytelling an important skill to develop for a customer success manager?
Storytelling is part of effective communication.
Mm,
And when we look at our world today, we are digesting an incredible amount of information. We actually have information overload, and at times, the term attention deficit applies. So,
yeah.
what storytelling does is it frames a message in a way that's memorable, relatable, and so that the listener can feel the story and connect with us. And I think Maya Angelou's quote really explains the power of storytelling very well. Maya Angelou said, I've learned that people will forget what you said, what you did, but people will not forget how you made them feel. So
Wow.
the story is the feel that connects people.
All of the best presenters I've ever seen don't present just data points. Don't just present facts.
Mm.
They build a story around it. We had so we just had our big user group like user conference a couple of weeks ago for the organization I work for, and one of the speakers there was Dr. Richard Harris. Now, if you don't know who Dr.
Oh,
Richard Harris is, he was instrumental in getting the boys that were stuck in the cave in where was it? In Southeast Asia. Remember when
Mm.
the boys were stuck in the cave? He was
Mhm.
instrumental in that process. Now, you should see the way the people were sitting at the edge of their seats for 15 minutes while this man was talking, and it's because he built a story around it. Like there were people like in tears
Mhm.
by the end, and to see the impact that he had, and like everyone walked out of that talk, having had a feeling that they could take away from that talk, and I think it was one of the best
Mm.
speeches I've ever sat through.
Incredible.
it is. It is definitely. And now that you're talking about that experience now, I just came up with one that I had in the last Pulse in Europe that Gainsight did here or in Amsterdam. And Nick Mehta gave an amazing speech where he was also including some personal scenarios that he had on his life. So I also feel touched, and I came out feeling even a little bit emotionally confused because it was really touchable. And that's part of the what storytelling, as what you, Christine, you just
Mhm.
said, like the code. um, you will People will forget what you did, but will never forget how you made them feel. And that just came on my mind, same as your story now. And this is amazing opening for the first challenge of the day, actually. And the first challenge of the day is about creating memorable stories. So, why is it a challenge? Well, how can you create a story when you're talking about with a customer and you're going into some business or issues as well, problems that you have to solve, and how
Mhm.
can you make that actually a memorable story for them to actually understand what's going on and make it sticky? So developing stories that stick with the customer, ensuring that they are impactful, that they align with the customer needs and experiences, is not an easy task to do, and it's something that you develop. So Christine, I have a question for you. I would like to hear your insight on this one. What
Mhm.
strategies do you use to ensure your stories are engaging and actually resonate with your customers' specific needs and experiences?
That's a great question, Bayron. And I think of storytelling like a muscle, and quite often it's an underused muscle. And once you start using it, you realize how powerfully it works and
Yeah.
that it's effective and it's worth the time to think about storytelling, how you're going to frame the message in an effective and memorable way. Now, one of the first things you need to do as you're going through the storytelling process is understanding the audience,
Yeah.
right? Who is going to be hearing the story? Who's going to be interacting with you in the story? So, from a customer success manager perspective, it's doing that stakeholder audience mapping exercise. Who is it on the client side that will be there? Is it the C-suite? Is it your admin? Is it users? Is it their procurement department? Is their IT department in there? Who is it on the client side that will be in attendance? The other side of the coin, as well as internally, who inside on our side of the team is going to be there? Is there going to be my VP in the call? Is there someone from product in the call, potentially talking about roadmap? Is the account executive there? So that's the very first step, Bayron, is looking at who the audience is.
And I take it back to sort of the user conference that we just had, because we had a lot of speakers, right? And some of them
Mhm.
were sort of like world renowned speakers, and they're sitting in a room full of like lawyers essentially, right? And they have to try and figure out how to really align what they're trying to say with what they're talking about from for the whole day that these lawyers are here for, right? So it's interesting, like, because you think about something like the story of saving the Thai boys from the cave, and then trying to figure out how that works within sort of small law in Australia. And there's this beautiful sort of like connection that Dr. Richard Harris made on resilience, right? And making
Mhm.
sure that you keep, going. And it's interesting because I was thinking like, well, it's a very interesting, topic to be talking about. I do wonder how he's gonna, make it specific to the audience that he's talking to. And he did a beautiful job, kind of tying that through to the end as well. So I think, yeah, thinking about the audience is really, really important there. But I mean, even to take it from a micro storytelling level, like how you approach sort of the onboarding champion on the customer side versus the executive on the customer side,
Yeah.
and building a story around the short term versus the long term and the vision and things like that is really important to know when the appropriate time is to talk to different levels and of the story.
Amazing, amazing. And lawyers are a fun group, I'm sure, Nav.
Are they?
They're
I'm sure they
yeah,
are.
they're an enjoyable group, that's for sure.
Cool. Very cool.
Remember,
Very
Nav, you're
cool.
being recorded.
Like that.
I think the next piece in the storytelling process is, once again, digging deeper on the audience and the what's in it for me
Mm.
conversation. What is it in the story that's going to pull and tug on their hearts? What is it that matters to them? And I'm curious to know, Nav, when it came to pulling out those threads at this event that you were at, were the speakers quite effective in pulling out what resonated with the lawyers, the legal audience?
Yeah, I think so. A lot of the audience, right, would have been people that run their own law firms. They're very small law firms, maybe one, two, three users, in each firm, and
Mhm.
a lot of the content was obviously very specific to that. But these keynote sessions were around things like like how do you communicate well with people, right? Like how do you use psychology when you're trying to deal with people and things like that. And I think, I think what everyone took away from that is, right,
Mhm.
two things. We had two main keynote speakers. One was a psychologist and the way that you approach conversations, and the other was Dr. Richard Harris. And I think that the two main sort of things that they took away from that was one, how do you on a day-to-day deal with the people that you have to work with? And these are sometimes, family lawyers who are dealing with, people who are going through the worst day of their life, right?
Yeah.
Or people that, have gone through abuse and things like that. And, really being able to use the empathy to just talk to those people. There are also people who are, grinding to make their business work, and the resilience that is required to, be able to take it from, 0 to 100 and making sure that, you build your way up. And I think when everyone sits in that room and they think about what's in it for me, there's a lot to take away from that, right? And I think being able to bridge that gap for the people that are listening is really important. If you just come in and tell the story the same way you tell it every single time, it might not resonate as well as if you're able to help them bridge the gap on what they need to take away from that story that you're telling them.
Amazing, Nav. I like some of the pieces that you brought up in your experience. And, one of the things that you've alluded to already is around some of the other key elements of a story. One is a setting, which is the context of the listener, where it took place, the time, the environment that they're in, what they were experiencing. So, you've pointed out setting in your sharing. As well, there's recognizing that there's a tension point in the story. What is the goal or what is the conflict that we are trying to describe and resolve? So that came out in what you shared as well. And there's also themes too here. I think the biggest ones that you talked about were around this idea of resilience and bravery and facing death, facing a high stress situation. Those themes were also woven into the story. So those are other key elements in the story that you want to build into your communications as well. So it sounds like it was done extremely well at this event that you attended.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool, 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 cool. I think in particular, when it comes to, us drilling down a little bit more around C-suite communication, you need to be really, really concise. And you can tell me what your experience is, Nav and Bayron, but I find in particular, if there is C-suite audience in there, attention span is very limited and they're looking for very concise, high value hits of information. So when we're communicating to the exec office, I feel the need for a greater level of clarity, cohesiveness, credibility is also very important in the conversation as well. And I'm curious to understand, from your point of view, Nav and Bayron, do you have the same experience or something different from me?
From my experience with C-suites, there are two sides, right, of attention that you get from C-suite. One is if you're trying to give them an update on something, right, whether it's good or bad or whatever, like, where they're interested in hearing about the progress or updates on something, clear and concise, right? Essentially, like, where are we right now? What's next? And that's about it, right? Like it's 3 sentences max. The other side of the coin is when you're talking about what's actually really important to them, right? And this is more open-ended, and this is where we start talking about what their vision is and how they want to, sort of align. And if, they see whatever it is that you're supporting or, being in CSM for fits within that vision. And in that situation, you want to be able to keep that conversation going a bit, because you want to try and unpack and unearth a lot of the information. And if you hit the right notes with a C-suite, when you're talking about vision like that, it actually ends up being a longer conversation. They're actually really passionate about talking about that because they really want to try and, see how you can help them get that vision, right? So I think, it really depends. Like if you go into and this is always something that I've seen in almost every team that I've managed, is like if you're going into a business review and you've managed to get an executive to into and sit through that business review for an hour and a half, however long that is, and you've got 50 slides and 45 of them are just usage data and support tickets and all that stuff. You've lost them. They're not going to come back again, right? You want to do clear and concise, one slide on what the updates are, things that matter, ROI and things like that, where they want to know that they're getting what they need out of it. And then it's all open-ended questions, and it's the rest of the time should be spent understanding what the executive in that room wants, right? And really trying to drive that. And I think the important part of being able to do that is for you to create an environment where the story can be told with you helping the story along, right? And how you fit within that story, because the executive knows what he wants to get done, and know potentially how to get him there. And that's where you want to build this is where we are, how do we get you there? That's sort of like a story from value as is to value to be.
You brought up a really excellent example around executive business reviews, and this is something that I've done in the past, which is doing the legwork before the actual review, just to make sure you're hitting the right themes in the story for the audience, just reconfirming. And I've also had a situation come up where a surprise comes up, where the conversation is going in a different direction from what was in the roadmap of the EBR, the agenda of the EBR. And I find that also very interesting to stop and pause and sometimes organically go with that conversation.
Yeah.
So I guess the point I want to make is that it's okay to come off the story sometimes.
Yeah.
And explore a new thread or a new theme.
So there should be a storyline, right? I mean,
yeah, there's a general storyline, yes, but don't be afraid to go off of it if there's an organic point that comes up from the audience, to take that time to explore it, or you could say it's important and we'll pin it to follow up in another conversation. I think another aspect that comes into storytelling as well is just to be aware of the language that one is using in the story. So for example, all of us in this call today, we're in customer success, but sometimes the audience, they're not entrenched in customer success as much as we are. There's certain acronyms, certain terms that we may be using. So quite often I like to think of the way that I am communicating is, would the layperson understand? Would my neighbor understand if I spoke to them about this particular topic? So I think there is a beautiful simplicity in making sure that we use language that's understandable by anybody. And I know some of the listeners may be thinking, oh my gosh, how do I do storytelling? Where do I start? And also I believe the customer success role is evolving as we speak right now in terms of the skill sets that are required from us. Not only our harder technical skills, but the soft skills around communication and around storytelling. So what I want to share with all of the listeners is that, storytelling is that muscle that I mentioned earlier that you can train and strengthen. There are a lot of amazing resources out there, and you can certainly talk to your CS leader about getting support on improving your storytelling and communication skills. So I would say, if you have a takeaway from this call today, is talk to your leader.
Yeah.
And get their support around your training on storytelling. Nav, tell me with your team, how do you handle that conversation around helping CSMs enhance their storytelling communication skills?
So we're lucky in that we've got some really skilled CSMs in the team. Now there are a couple of teams in that I manage. One is the onboarding team, and the other one's the CSM team. What we try to do is, and this is where I think a lot of leaders can help their teams, sort of build out the standard sort of approach in how to build that story, right? And give them, standardized material, or build it with them. So things like, for the onboarding team, a kickoff deck that takes them through, what their journey is going to be for the next 90 days, and sort of building that value story on having nothing right now to having all that value in 90 days. And for the CSM team, as we like, there's always a point of value that they come out of onboarding, yeah? And then what we want to try and do is build the maturity of that customer over time. And the way that we do that is that we've got these great value decks that have been created that really tell a story. And what we try to do is then train and enable the CSMs to be able to identify what within those decks are relevant to the customers based off of where they are in the journey, right? So if they come out and there's like a whole bunch of other functionality and things that, it always comes down to what are you really trying to sell here, right? So we're trying to sell the idea that using more of our functionality is really important. That's what's in it for us. What's in it for the customer is what do they get out of using all of that functionality, right? Like, where are you right now? What does that vision, story and value look like down the line in 12 months, right? And then trying to build that out for them so that they're actually on that journey with you, and that story unfolds as we go through the 12 months. But being able to identify, like, instead of going in and just showing a deck that has everything on it, really picking and choosing what you're talking about to be able to take them on that, next, like, maybe 4-month journey or 6-month journey or even 12-month journey with them.
You're giving them the resources there.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Pipeline.
That is so beautifully said, Nav, because, with these EBR decks that we have, from a time-saving perspective, a storytelling time-saving perspective as a CSM, they're extremely helpful. But it is very important to customize them because you want to be able to tell the client's story at the same time. Some clients that we work with have an incredible history. And to understand where they came from, where they're going next, to be able to weave their story into our decks, that's what the personalization part is. That is also the hook for the client. They realize that we get who they are and what they are, and that builds trust during the storytelling process as well.
Definitely resources, training, all of this is definitely also a challenge. Now, Nav, the way that you manage the team, the company, you're given a baseline for customer success to build something from it and build storytelling for the customers, which is amazing. But if there's someone who's out there either transitioning to customer success or already in customer success, Christine, Nav, what channels or what resources have you found effective to learn this skill?
What the amazing thing is, like, customer success is so popular these days. You could probably just Google and you'll find like 1,000 things. It's incredible. But there's a lot of more targeted stuff that you can do, right? If you look at things like some of the certifications that are out there, I don't think I've ever really looked for a CSM that is certified, but what I do love are CSMs that go out and actually try to learn things outside of what they just know, and ways of working, things like that. You look at some of the most successful CSMs, at least the ones that I've managed, they're the ones that are able to sit in front of a small client or a big client and be able to manage those in very different ways, right? And know that it requires a different set of skills to be able to manage those in different ways. And the way that they get to that point is by doing and understanding and learning and watching and shadowing and asking questions and failing to a certain extent, to try and get to that point. So I think there's a lot out there. How about you, Christine? How do you kind of
I,
go about that?
I agree with you, Nav. There are a lot of amazing resources out there. I personally just finished a communications course, Storytelling for Leaders, that was through Coursera, through Northwestern University. It was very good, very
Interesting.
concise. LinkedIn also has some great resources as well. Other people within our organization that are great storytellers are our sales colleagues, our account executives and account managers. Listening in, shadowing
Absolutely.
on some of their calls
Yeah.
is also excellent. I am going to share with Bayron later a list of
Yes, please.
recommended reading on business storytelling. But I think something that's fun and also very practical is Pecha Kucha exercise. And Pecha Kucha was popularized over a decade ago. And it's a great way to exercise your storytelling muscle. And I attended and also participated in some of them. And it was 10 minutes, 10 slides. And you talk about your topic with a high level of passion. And I got a chance to listen to some very interesting people who were doing bookbinding with gold, women's roller derby, um, a person with a passion for coffee makers and kitchen
Oh,
gadgets.
nice.
So, that would be an interesting little challenge as a CS team and also as a team building exercise to do a mini Pechakucha as a way to strengthen that storytelling muscle. Because a lot of this could have to do with confidence. Like technically, I can tell you, okay, these are the elements of the story, but until you go out and actually do it yourself and build that confidence around your storytelling skills, it's theory. Well, I think an exercise like this Pechakucha would be an interesting challenge for any CS team to have fun with.
I love that idea. Just
Go for it,
like,
Nav.
yeah, I love that. I think I might bring that into to my team and see, if they want to do something like that.
Yeah,
Just
cool.
a 5 minute
Cool.
story per person. Go
Yeah.
out there and we, get into it. Yeah. I also imagine like it's depending on the type of personality that you got in your team. Some of them are just really uncomfortable doing that, but it'd be interesting to see, who'd be willing to.
But like you're touching really interesting points. Confidence is definitely something that will help a lot, not only in storytelling, in anything that we all do. It's something that also comes with time and development. And there's actually a resource, and I will share with everyone that I think that it also builds confidence on people and
Mm-hmm.
also will help when it comes to storytelling. So probably you know about this, and it's gonna be in the about section. It's called Toastmasters Club. Have you heard
Mm-hmm.
about it? Yes. So I did not. And basically, I was talking to a future guest, and he used to be a president of the club. So he explained me how it works, and is literally like 200 meters from my house. I went there the first time, and it's amazing because what they do is that they build confidence and teach public speaking skills, and you can also meet new people, right? And what happened is that members prepare and deliver speeches, and then we all receive feedback. So it's interesting because the first day that I was there, I had to present myself like easy. My name is Byron, what I like, what I don't like, and why am I there?
Mm-hmm.
When I was there in front of 15 people, I felt like really it wasn't easy as I thought. So that's how you start developing the confidence and that speaking skills and that storytelling by getting yourself out of this comfort zone most of the time. So I will definitely recommend everyone to be part of this club.
Yeah, it's an amazing organization.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
I was part of it back in my teenage years. Back when I was in the Middle East. I grew up in the Middle East in Kuwait, and there was a Toastmasters club there that I joined as well. It's global. Like if anyone listening, like it's a global organization that you can probably find a local arm of that you can join.
Yeah, it's literally everywhere, basically. I never thought it was gonna be in my city. But everyone listening, I hope we gave you enough time for you to go for your popcorns, because now it's time for storytelling. And Christine is gonna be taking the ownership. And Christine, thank you so much for being proactive on doing this for our audience. I think the scenario is totally yours. In the meanwhile, if you don't mind, Naf and myself, we're gonna be muted because we're gonna be eating some popcorns. I hope you all doing the same.
I've been waiting for this moment. I've been staring at the popcorn for like the last half hour.
That's why. I thought you were multitasking.
That's funny. Oh my gosh.
So,
So I wanted to share a story about an actual organization that I worked with. I've changed the names, of course, just to preserve identity here. And the organization that I worked with was actually an enterprise video communications platform that focused on sales enablement for different organizations. And they had released some new features that were AI driven. So that was really, really exciting because a lot of organizations today are looking for that competitive edge where they can save time, they can increase dollars in revenue, they can improve their brand or future-proof their business, mitigate risks. So everybody is looking for that competitive edge with AI tools, whether they're in-house or created externally. So when it comes to that process of, what is the story that I'm telling here, I'll just provide a little bit of background and context here. So this particular client, they had a upcoming renewal of 200K ARR coming up in the year. The previous quarter, they had also had some layoffs within the organization as well. So, we're talking about renewal conversations at a very delicate time in an organization. There's a lot of instability going on. So, how do we have this conversation? So we want to have a sense of empathy and compassion in the conversation, understanding some of the economic factors that are occurring in the client's landscape. At the same time, we want to try and bring greater attention to the value of our product or service, that now more than ever, it's a necessity in the organization because it will help them long term. So this conversation that I had with the client, first of all, I acknowledged what their situation was. Sometimes there's the elephant in the room. You need to acknowledge the elephant in the room.
yeah.
Take that moment and just say, hey, we understand some layoffs have occurred in the organization. How are you doing? How is the team doing? And I've even gone to the point of supporting with resources of other organizations where I knew they were hiring. It could have been my organization, or it could have been another one where they were still doing hiring. So I was trying to treat that particular situation with a sense of empathy, and also focusing on the fact that our solution was providing value and was continuing to provide value, and especially with the new AI features, where it would free up the sales team from writing up their own scripts, from doing manual prospecting and automating it so that they could truly focus on the client conversations that mattered, that were hotter opportunities within their sales pipeline to try and close.
Nice.
So, this came up in a one-to-one conversation with the client, but also there were emails that were following up as well on this particular situation. So, in terms of how did I use Gen AI around this, it was, first of all, recognizing that there's different GPT tools out there. And the audience may want to experiment a little bit. You could be using ChatGPT, it could be Microsoft Copilot, it could be Gemini, and experiment a little bit to see what you prefer in terms of the output. But I think more importantly is how you phrase the question or the prompt to get the best possible output. So I'm just going to use a brief example here, and it'll just be a moment. And I'm just gonna share screen momentarily.
I want to invite everyone who is on listening to go to YouTube. This will also be there, so you can see what Christine is sharing right now.
Okay, so I happen to use Microsoft Copilot. And with the prompt, what I did was I indicated who I am. I said, as a CSM, provide context to GPT in terms of who is asking the question. And then I tried to be descriptive about what was occurring. So I said, as a CSM, I have a client who advises the company is going through a merger and a round of layoffs is also imminent. Client cost cutting is putting their upcoming renewal at risk. And I'm asking GPT to specifically use storytelling elements to create a message with the outcome of increasing the chances of contract renewal.
Well, Christine, what you're given here is basically a formula. It's amazing.
So with ChatGPT, remember, as a CSM, this is a way to save time. That's one. Number two, if you feel that your storytelling skills need work, this can help ease some of the burden around trying to figure out, how do I tell the story? So that's the second aspect of, leveraging a GPT tool for this. So for example, in this particular situation, it's very interesting what it came up with here. And, let's just go through the response. Subject, the title, Navigating Stormy Waters Together.
Yeah, I saw that. It caught my attention. It
that's
makes it really
interesting,
human,
right?
yeah.
That's interesting. Rather than your renewal comes up on Jan 21st,
But of course,
2024 or whatever, it just kind of like, oh, okay, well, what's going on here?
but it is important to know, again, like, who is it going to, right? Who is it aiming for?
Yes, definitely, definitely. So it says, Dear client, I hope this message finds you well amidst the winds of change. As we sail through uncharted waters, I wanted to take a moment to reflect on our journey together, a journey that has been marked by collaboration, resilience, and shared aspirations. So I found that interesting, because uncharted waters, they're stepping into the unknown with some of the layoffs and budget cuts. I thought this was a more connective way to say, hey, I hear there's layoffs happening. Yeah.
And it like summarize it in just 3 sentences.
Exactly. And and once again, you have to remember that this is the output that's coming out from the GPT tool. I'm just reading through it. Of course, you would need to go back and sculpt it so it comes out in your tone of voice, and to refine the context even a bit further.
And that's so important, because sometimes we just use ChatGPT as it will fix everything. And I mean, it's a good tool to brainstorm, but we still have to add ourselves to it.
I think
Exactly.
what ChatGPT does is a really good first draft for you to
Yes.
be able to work on. And I think, if you think about the time it takes to write your first draft, it actually saves you a lot of time, but then you still have to do that rest of that work to make sure
It
it's
does.
actually something you can send out. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And even if you go through it, you can refine it. I mean, you can ask it to like reduce it down to an exact number of bullet points or a certain number of words as well too. So it can also help with the refinement process. I actually have the opposite problem when I write. I'm extremely detailed. I need ways to narrow it down, funnel it down. So I find ChatGPT really helps me with narrowing down my story and my text. So I find it very interesting with some of the language that came out, because I asked for storytelling elements. So for example, the calm seas, delivering value, tempest approaches, acknowledging, the mergers and layoffs. And also this word here, I found that very interesting, which was, we are your anchor. We're here as something solid to support and root you in very tumultuous times.
And those are
And
words that,
also the statement around commitment.
you know, those are words, Christine, that we don't use on a daily basis. I mean, Sometimes we repeatedly use a lot of words, but that's one that we don't use that often.
Exactly, exactly. And I found the languaging very interesting, the idea of saying the word partnerships, shared resilience, shared dreams. So I think as much as the client's organization is going through stuff, so is ours quite often. We're subject to the same macroeconomic factors as well. Yeah. So, this is an example of the possibilities of using Chat GPT in part of your storytelling. And, Bayron and Nav, I would just like to invite your comments on this. What do you think of this?
I think this is, like this is a good way to have the conversation that you're going to have anyway, right? I mean,
Mm,
like you see emails come, I get a lot of prospecting emails come my way,
mm,
and they're always exactly the same, right? And
mhm,
and I guess it's not necessarily renewals and things like this, but using something like this to catch my attention, make me want to read through it, and also make me feel like you've actually done a bit of research would actually really catch my eye a lot more than what most prospecting emails I see come through are.
mm,
So I imagine when we've got like some of the teams that I managed had like hundreds of renewals per month, and
mhm,
we automate an email that goes out letting them know that the renewal is coming up. And I mean, the response rate is so low because usually you want to try and book a meeting to try and talk about it and things like that. If we were to try and figure out better, more eye-catching ways to do that, I think
mhm.
we'd be getting much higher response rates. So I think this is a great way to catch the attention. And then once you get them on the books and you start talking to them, then the conversation's yours, right, to have.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Another thing that I've tried as well too, and Bayron and Nav, you may have seen this in some of your organizations as well, is sometimes what I will do is instead of putting this text into an email, I create a short video clip,
Hmm.
no more than 3 to 5 minutes expressing this message.
Yeah, and
But
there's
it comes across completely differently when it's a video clip
yeah,
with me
Yeah.
sharing the story, sharing the message.
people appreciate that. I mean, if you know that the customer that you're talking to is a more visual customer, or
Mm,
maybe it's there's something technical, but yeah, definitely they will appreciate that instead of jumping into a call, so adding some of their time in the calendar for something that you can do by seeing a video. They really appreciate that. What I want to say about the storytelling with ChatGPT is actually highlighting what Nav said, that it does save you time, but you still have to invest time on actually rewriting that. And the good thing about ChatGPT is that actually you can go deeper. You can actually break down stuff. So what we saw in your screen sharing was amazing. Then you know that there are words that maybe you prefer to change, or you can also tell ChatGPT, can you please short this? It's too long. Can you please short it? Can you please make concise? My goal is the following. So if you tell this ChatGPT, it will create a second version or even a third one. You grab all of those versions and then you decide which one is the best. So basically you're creating an um, um, Einstein from of it. No, Frankenstein. So should I cut this part or should I leave it? I don't know.
Oh, I think that's funny. I like
I think you definitely need to leave it.
Okay, I mean a Frankenstein, but then you look like an Einstein.
that.
And I mean that's how you can definitely work on that.
Exactly, exactly. And I think over time, what will happen with the GPT tools is they're going to get better. And they're going to get better by industry because, as we know, customer success is something very unique and special. And as models begin to specialize a bit more in different areas, the responses are going to be cleaner and better over time. Coincidentally, Bayron and I, we were talking earlier, Nav, and Customer Success Collective, and I believe we're all members here of the collective. They, announced that they have their CSC GPT launched, and it's very interesting. So I tried popping in some questions in there, and the responses were a bit more sculpted. So I can only imagine over time
Yeah.
that this is going to get better for all of us as CSMs, whether it's storytelling or other aspects of customer success where we're looking for insights and guidance.
Yeah, definitely. I will also share that in the about section.
Yeah.
And Christine, it's time to wrap up. I mean, I know people we went over as normally 45 minutes, 35, but I think it was really worth it to go deeper into storytelling. And
Mhm.
that's it for today's episode. Christine, thank you so much for being here with us. Nav, it has been amazing recording with you as well. See you soon. And remember, everyone, keep learning, keep growing, and let's keep improving the world of customer success. Until next time.